Many of us don't know anything about our neighbors, not even their first name. I live in a small housing block about 10 minutes away from here in Tottenham, and I always say hello to my neighbors. And some say hello back. But others scowl, or they walk away, they're surprised, and they're possibly even bemused that somebody spoke to them. And most people in the 8 flats in my small block don't know each other, and they don't talk to each other. And that's the case for my street and the neighboring streets. Tottenham is a small community. There are maybe 100,000 people who live here. It's, well, 1% of London's population. And some people do know each other and each other's families, but many others don't. And some people are lonely, and some people are isolated. And despite all the recent investment in the area, parts of our community can still be described as being atomized. So the question is, can we de-atomize our communities, like the community we have here? My answer is, of course we can. And there are plenty of people doing that already. Earlier, we heard from Rochelle Sinclair and the fantastic market in Wood Green. A great local example is the Beehive, whose logo we saw earlier. It's a true community pub with all sorts of events going on, from live art classes through to storytelling. I think storytelling is really important because it makes people talk to each other. And when storytelling focuses on local stories, that becomes even more significant. Or, another great example, the local music rehearsal facility, Ballet Studios. Local musicians come there, and musicians from further afield go there as well to rehearse. And people who have never met each other before talk to each other, they swap stories, they talk about each other's music, they find out about each other's gigs, and they become a community. Now, some people call things like that social innovation, developing new ideas for social good and for improving people's lives. And there are, of course, famous historical examples of huge social innovations. The National Health Service, the Open University, the great Victorian invention of public parks to allow more people to be outside, spend more time outside, and improve their health. But examples like the ones I just listed, which exist here in Tottenham, are small and local, and that's what makes them so important. What communities like ours need is an ecology of these interactions between the people who live here. And such an ecology can only evolve. It cannot be imposed from top down. There is currently a lot of building work going on in Tottenham, as in other parts of London or New York or Moscow, other big cities around the world. And the work that's being done, it comes from a view which is supposed to improve the area for the community, for the people who live here. But much of this kind of work can actually alienate and atomize the community further. And once a community is atomized, it's much harder for it to stand against what some might call progress, but what many others call gentrification or even destruction. And so people leave. And what's left behind, the new buildings, the overpriced coffee shops, they no longer serve the community that was there in the first place. They represent an outside planner's point of view of how things should be, and not necessarily what people who live here need to make their lives better. I have to disclose an interest. I'm a biker. There is a fantastic local business just down the road from here, over in an industrial unit in Markfield Road. It's called Zenith Motorcycles. And it's a true neighborhood business which serves local bikers, people who ride motorbikes, people who ride scooters. It keeps their machines safe and well maintained, but does something much more important. It brings people together. It helps young people learn vital skills and understand technology, and it helps educate people about staying safe on the road. And importantly, it creates a safe space in which people who don't know each other feel comfortable talking to each other, swapping stories, exchanging tips, and so on. And this business is a huge credit to our neighborhood. The owner, a lady called Karen, has spent so much effort and put so many resources into building it up. And so a year after she set up this amazing community asset, because of what some might call progress, the landlord has warned her that the rent on a small industrial unit where she runs the business from is likely to double. And if the rent doubles, the business won't be able to survive, it won't be able to sustain that. So who is this landlord, which seems to care so little about the huge contributions Zenith Motorcycles makes to the community here? Is it some kind of Dickensian villain? And the answer is no, it's the council. It's the local government body which is tasked with looking after our community. If I may give another example, recently I wrote a book called StreetCraft, and for it I interviewed a couple of dozen of criminal justice innovators. People who, despite many things being against them, did great work to make their communities safer. One of these extreme innovators is a guy called Michael, who runs a fantastic Tottenham charity called the Harp Trust. He works to help young people who have offended for whatever reason to resettle and reintegrate back in the community, and he does really good work. And his setup, I think, is unique. He started off running this project within the council, but then the council cut funding and said that the project, despite the great results, will have to be shut down. Michael refused to accept this. He didn't want the community to lose this resource. And so he went out and through sheer dedication and huge amounts of work, he fundraised, he secured new funding, and then he set the project up as a brand new charity, completely independent from the council. So there are people, despite whatever top-down initiatives are going on, who genuinely understand what communities like ours need and who fight to make sure it's still there for us. Michael didn't feel the need for permission from the powers that be to continue to do that. I belong to a motorbike riding club with a number of members in Tottenham. And last Christmas, we were appalled that here in Haringey, over 50 families were going to go hungry on Christmas Day. They had no dinner to put on their table. All of the authority structures have abandoned them. They had no food to eat. They were starving at Christmas. And they all relied on the charity of food banks to help them get through this very difficult time. The members of our motorcycle riding club decided we would not allow these families to go hungry at Christmas. So we fundraised and we collected enough food to make sure that the food bank was in a position to supply a Christmas meal to every single one of these families. We didn't ask any authorities for approval, we just went out and did it, and hopefully made a small difference to a significant number of people's lives. But my message, the big idea, it's not negative. I have listed some negative examples, I've listed some positive examples. My message is not negative. What I'm saying is we shouldn't just do this kind of stuff when there is a gap or when something is missing, or in spite of what official structures and agencies think needs to be done. We shouldn't have to wait for somebody in charge to tell us to do this. Our communities, like the one here in Tottenham, can be true hotbeds of social innovation. By acting on our desire to connect with our neighbors and do stuff for others, we can de-atomize our community. So how about next time any one of us feels inspired to do something like this, we just go and knock on our neighbor's door and we say to them, I've got a brilliant idea for making our community even better. Let's work together to make this happen. come along for the ride.